Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. I actually wasn't going to do another video for today just because things have been kind of busy here. But I just got a text from Tyler Cragen. He said that President Nelson is not going to be at this general conference. If you don't know who Tyler Cragen is, he actually has a channel. Haven't talked to him in a while, but his channel is called The Greatest Cause. So he let me know about this, and that blew me away. And so I decided to, do my due diligence, go and verify. He said that he said it on his social media account, so we'll read what he put here. And then it turns out that, at least according to one news outlet, that Elder Holland is not going to be there either. So let's just go ahead and let's get into it. So first with President Nelson's post. Dear brothers, sisters, and friends, we have the cherished opportunity this coming weekend to attend or watch our semi-annual General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. General Conference weekends are two of my favorite weekends of the year. How I love meeting in the conference center in Salt Lake City with all who gather there. This weekend, however, I will be watching General Conference through technology, just as most of you will. 3 weeks ago, I fell and injured the muscles in my lower back. This episode has reminded me of the reality that things sometimes change quickly in our lives. This photo of my counselors and me was taken at the celebration of my 99th birthday. 2 days later, I fell. Thankfully, my healing is progressing, but as my physician says, we don't have much data on how 99-year-olds recover from an injury like this one, so I am prescribing a slow, careful approach to healing so that you achieve a full recovery. Having prescribed just such a course of action for my own patients years ago, I feel duty-bound to follow doctor's orders. I'm still not able to sit in a chair for long periods of time. However, I'm hoping to record my general conference message and look forward to participating in this marvelous October 2023 general conference through technology. I pray that each of us, wherever we may be, will approach this sacred weekend with our hearts full of gratitude for the privilege of hearing the gospel of Jesus Christ proclaimed by his servants. May this general conference be a time of joy and spiritual rejuvenation for you. I know that it will be for me. So here's the picture of him, 99th birthday. We've talked a lot about his birthday. He is now in the 100th year of his life. Interesting that it has 17,000 likes, by the way. We've talked about 17 quite a bit, mostly associating it with him being the 17th president of the church. And I've talked about 17 a lot on the channel, other interesting 17s that are related to him. But, oh yeah, and by the way, we've noted this before. All the apostles, they all are following 17 accounts, which include the other apostles, as well as I think the Tabernacle Choir and the church account. So, but 17. So this is very interesting for a few different reasons. For one, he says that he's going to record his general conference message, singular. So I'm going to assume that maybe he's just going to speak once, essentially, just through one video. Unless you can read this as, 2 or more general conference talks, but my guess would be that it's probably just going to be one. And as you know, I've been keeping track of his talks because we've noticed interesting patterns in his talks. So, for example, most recently we noted that he has mentioned the Salt Lake Temple and its renovation 7 times, once each conference, from October 2018 until October 2021. 7. And then it stopped. I figured that he would just keep talking about it, using it as a metaphor for us preparing for the second coming. But no, it was only 7 times, and that's 7 is a special number, as you know. Way before that, I noticed this interesting pattern uh, for his first 5 general conferences, where in his first one, as president of the church, he spoke 5 times. The next one it was 4, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. And so you had this like weird kind of mirroring type thing going on with the midpoint in April 2019. And in case you're new to the channel, the very middle talk of that, and it's so repetitious, but like I said, I think it's worth repeating. In the middle, no, not that one, sorry. April 2019, Nelson. Oh yeah, come follow me. That's right. Okay, so let me show you this again, but let's look at this where I have each individual talk listed. So you can see the pattern over here, and in the middle, the 11th talk is come follow me. All right, so that is the talk where he spoke about, I was about to say Lahaina, Paradise, California, that was destroyed by fire, just like Lahaina this year. And at the end of the talk, he said that time is running out. And you can tell that he meant it, because if you watch the video, you can see it in his facial expression. You can see it the way that he pauses. You can hear it in his tone of voice, his body language. He says, now as president of his church, I plead with you who have distanced yourselves from the church, and with you who have not really sought to know that the Savior's church has been restored, do the spiritual work to find out for yourselves, and please do it now. Time is running out. And once again, I have searched high and low using different tools to see if any other prophet had said anything like this, and the answer is no. He is the only one. He said it as he shows a burnt down city, which you could use as a metaphor, and you should probably think about as a metaphor, or not a metaphor, but a foreshadowing of the second coming in the earth that's going to be burned with fire. Well, so it just so happens that, this was the general conference after the Paradise Fire, okay, which was in 2018. And let me just turn on my Google Earth. It just so happens that a parallel event, maybe a twin event to the Paradise Fire in California, has occurred before this general conference. And it was Lahaina, another city that was destroyed by fire. Almost the entire thing. We've gone into the interesting happenings with this fire, how both LDS chapels survived. And there were other buildings too, but not many. But among the few that survived were both of our chapels, as well as the banyan tree, which is the largest fig tree in the United States. It's a type of fig tree. It survived, and this tree was planted the same year that President David O. McKay was born, and it survived. So we've talked about the implications of that, the churches surviving, the banyan tree. We know that at the second coming, that which is going to survive is those that are righteous in the church, for one, but generally just everyone that's at least living a terrestrial law. But those that are not, those that are living a telestial law, are going to go the way of the earth. So let me point this out again. The general conference after Paradise, California, he said, time is running out. We are now almost 5 years since that warning. And now, the conference after Lahaina burned down, he's not going to be there. He's going to deliver a message. I guess we'll have to wait and see how many messages he delivers, or if it's just the one video message, and that's the way that it sounds to me. And that's interesting because I've been keeping track of how many times he speaks each conference. If we look at this little table right here, number of talks. So the way that it's gone is 5, 4, 3, 4, 5. For lack of a better term, chiasmus. I'm sure everyone at this point has heard of the chiasmus way of writing. It's a type of Hebrew poetry where you write, verses, you write lines of text, and they mirror each other and then point toward the middle sentence. And the middle sentence is like the central concept of what's being communicated. In this case, time is running out. So after that pattern, which ended, interestingly, April 2020, which was that really important conference, after that, the number of times that he's spoken has declined. So after that, it's 4, 4, and then 3, 3, 3, and then last general conference, just twice. And now, seemingly, in this general conference, just once. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that, but I think it probably means that time is running out. Some people think that's silly. That's fine. Whatever. Let's look at President Monson. So October 2014, he spoke 4 times, and then every year after that, he just spoke twice. And then his last general conference, he didn't speak at all. And then after that, he passed away. Of course, President Nelson is different from Thomas S. Monson, and according to President Nelson's post, it's because he fell. So, I don't know. It doesn't sound too serious. So, we can't really know what's going to happen. All we can do is just kind of look at these things, look at the big picture. And think about the fact that there's order to the way that the Lord does things. There's a lot of order in his church. I don't know if President Nelson specifically planned this out himself. Probably not. I would tend to think that most, if not all, that the prophet does is inspired by the Lord. So mentioning the Salt Lake Temple renovation 7 conferences in a row to make a total of 7, and then doing this pattern right here, I think there's probably order to that, and it's not arbitrary. This pattern of not speaking as much at General Conference, that's a message that pretty much everyone can understand. It's like a countdown. It's like, maybe he's getting to that point where it's almost the end. The total number of talks that he's given so far is 40. The last General Conference, he gave his 40th talk as president of the church. This will be 41, but we've talked about the number 40 and how it's a number of testing, but also cleansing. So, for example, the ark and Noah's ark and the flooding, that took place for 40 days. It was a time that the earth was cleansed. With Israel wandering in the wilderness, it was a time when Israel was cleansed because those previous generations that lived in Egypt that were still had worldly Egyptian influence in them, they passed away before Israel entered the Promised Land. It was 40 years over which it was over 40 years that took place. So we're now at this 40 talks that President Nelson has given so far. I don't know. Not saying that it means anything, but it's just something to pay attention to. Let's move on from that. Okay, so Elder Holland. This was the latest update that I had seen until today. Let's read this. So this was put out earlier this month on the 10th. Elder Holland recuperating at home. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints released the following statement today about the health of Elder Jeffrey R. Holland. After an extended hospital stay, Elder Jeffrey R. Holland of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles is now recuperating at home. Elder Holland and his children are very grateful for the many prayers offered on his behalf during this health challenge in time of sorrow following the passing of Sister Holland. As his health improves, he looks forward to resuming active service in his ministry. So it's another optimistic message about their health that, they had a setback, but it seems like they're going to recover and everything's going to be okay. And I certainly hope that that's the case. I checked his social media account, and the most recent thing that was posted on here was in July. So he hasn't posted anything new since he came home from the hospital. And then I came across this article from cashdaily.com. I'm assuming, cashvalleydaily.com. This is an area in Utah. If you're not from Utah, Cache Valley is in Utah. President Russell M. Nelson and Elder Jeffrey R. Holland to miss General Conference. Now, before I read this, I thought that was very interesting because we've talked about the two prophets, or the two witnesses, the two olive sticks on this channel. In the book of Revelation, we learn that there's going to be two prophets raised up to the Jews, and essentially is going to warn them, preach to them, and then essentially as the final thing that happens before the second coming, they're killed, and then their bodies lie in the streets for 3.5 days, and then after that they're resurrected, and then the second coming happens. And that's essentially referring to the appearance of Christ to the Jews. And there's a lot of people that feel that all of that is like very, very literal, that there's going to be prophets wearing robes in the old city of Jerusalem going around and proselyting. And, they're going to be giving warnings to Benjamin Netanyahu or whoever is the prime minister at the time. And there's going to be famine, and there's going to be all these different things, plagues and stuff like that, because they're not listening to the prophets that are roaming the streets of Jerusalem. And then, the enemy forces and those that are against them, against their preaching, are going to kill them. And then they're going to literally lie in the actual streets of Jerusalem until they're resurrected 3.5 days later. And I'm not going to say that is not the case. I'm not in a position of authority to say so, but neither are you. Neither is anybody except for actual prophets and apostles. And there's not been a whole lot that has been said about this prophecy. But the reason why I bring it up is because I think back to this at the very beginning of President Nelson's presidency. Okay. This article came out the 16th of April, 2018. And you have President Nelson and Elder Holland in Jerusalem. This is one of the first things that he did when he became president of the church. He went on this global ministry tour. In the first place, I have to double check, but if I remember right, the first place that they went was Jerusalem. The title of this article, President Nelson's visit to the Holy Land is quote unquote significant, says Elder Holland. Here it is. Okay. Jerusalem was President Nelson's second destination on his worldwide tour to cities in Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Hawaiian Islands. Interesting, because think about just what happened in Hawaii. The tour began in London, England on Thursday, April 12th. Due to concerns pertaining to tension in the region and available airspace following the airstrikes on Syria by the U.S., UK, and France on April 14th, the church leaders left Jerusalem ahead of schedule and are now commencing the Africa portion of their trip. I want to say that there was another article, though, that said that Jerusalem was intended to be their first destination, but I'm not going to look into that right now. But anyway, just keep this image in mind, and we're going to read more about the two witnesses before you roll your eyes and you think that you know exactly how things are going to play out. I'm going to show you some things, but let's get back to this article from Cache Valley Daily. Okay, so it says, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints prepare for their semi-annual general conference this weekend, the president of the faith said he will not be in attendance due to a recent fall. President Russell M. Nelson and Elder Jeffrey R. Holland will both be watching the conference proceedings while continuing to recover. Again, this is the only source that I've been able to find that says this about Elder Holland. I haven't heard it anywhere else. I don't doubt it, but if you can confirm that, put it in the comments below. I'm going to skip this next part because we basically already covered that. In recent conferences, Nelson has sat on a chair while delivering his addresses to the church's 17 million members, and he announced earlier this year he sometimes uses a walker. Yeah, he actually, no, not this one. I think if we just go down a little bit, it shows that. Here it is right here. So he acknowledged that he uses a walker sometimes, not all the time. In Thursday's social media letter, okay, then they just quote him. I'm going to skip down. Nelson's predecessor, Thomas S. Monson, missed some conference sessions during the final years of his life. Church spokesman Doug Anderson said Elder Holland will also be absent and participating in conference sessions by watching them at home. The 82-year-old apostle was recently released from the hospital and continues to recuperate from his recent health challenges that caused him to be absent during April's general conference. So it's just odd. Out of the 15, the two that are not going to be there this general conference are these two that at the beginning of his presidency went to Jerusalem. Now you might be like, well, it sounds like they're okay. It's just because Elder Holland, he's recovering, so he's not, back up to his full strength. President Nelson, he's getting older, and old people, they fall from time to time and hurt themselves. So it's like, it's nothing out of the ordinary. And yeah, that may be true. I don't know. That may be true. We might be able to look at this at surface level. I do wonder, however, when it comes to the two prophets and being killed, it's not like everything gets published. It's not like everything gets published. Not saying that the church or President Nelson or Elder Holland are lying or that they're covering something up. Maybe they don't even know, but the church does have many enemies, and who knows, whatever. I mean, you can just throw that out. It's fine. But I think about things, for example, like what happened this year to Benjamin Netanyahu, hospitalized. So let's just look at this article. I'm not going to really read any of it, but okay, we're not watching that. Netanyahu was rushed to the hospital in the middle of the night, a week after being hospitalized for what doctors said was dehydration. They released him then after implanting a device to monitor his heart, but he was hospitalized again Sunday because it showed anomalies, prompting the need for a pacemaker. And the thing that's curious about that is this happened in the year which there's these really, really intense, ongoing protests taking place in Israel, the likes of which have not been seen in the state of Israel's history. I've expressed my opinion that I think that this is essentially a color revolution, We've gone over what Ehud Barak has said openly to Forum 555 and also to Chatham House. He just blatantly and unapologetically talks about how there's this plan essentially to overthrow the government, and it has to do with these protests. There's research that he cited that had been done where they analyzed all these different protests throughout from 1900, the year 1900 to, was it 2006 or 2016? I can't remember. But they noticed that there's a common denominator with the ones that were successful. And there were certain numbers that had to be reached. For example, 8% of the adult population of the country had to be participating in the protests. And in the case of these protests, they are. And then the protests simply have to keep going for a prolonged amount of time. And if you reach those two things, then what they found in the research is that the government either collapses or capitulates to whatever the demands are. So in a year when there's these very, very heightened tensions in Israel, and everybody's losing their mind over them, both inside Israel and outside Israel, because Israel's enemies have loved to watch this play out, because it's affecting military readiness, because people in the military are joining these protests and leaving their posts, which interferes with, training and requirements to maintain, licenses or qualifications and stuff like that, as is the case with pilots. While all this is happening, Benjamin Netanyahu mysteriously has these hospitalizations. And we've read articles where they said once that there was an assassination attempt on his life. So typically when there's assassination attempts, that's not something that you like to broadcast or acknowledge, because it could encourage others to do the same thing. And it worries the civilian population. So I don't know. All I am saying is it's very weird that in the very same conference, President Nelson, Elder Holland, who went to Jerusalem at the beginning of his presidency, one of the first things that President Nelson did, both of them are going to be absent this general conference. The conference after Lahaina burns that had a parallel event in Paradise, California, which after that happened in general conference, President Nelson said, time is running out. You see what I'm getting at? Could be wrong. So what about this whole thing with the two witnesses? Could this possibly be? Because look, they haven't been in Israel, in the streets, prophesying for 3.5 years. Well, let's look at a couple things. So first, I've shared this before. This was published by Deseret News. Mideast Prophecies, wow, BYU audience. This was back in 2010. And it was this presentation being given by Victor Ludlow. Who is that? Victor Ludlow is an emeritus religion professor at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and the author of several books on the book of Isaiah, most notably Isaiah, Prophet, Seer, and Poet. Ludlow is a scholar on Isaiah. Besides his Isaiah, Prophet, Seer, and Poet, he also wrote Unlocking Isaiah in the Book of Mormon. He also wrote Unlocking the Old Testament and Principles and Practices of the Restored Gospel. And then later, at the end of this article, it says, Ludlow has served in many callings in the LDS Church, including multiple times as a bishop and a president of the church's Germany Frankfurt mission from 1983 to 1986. So, acknowledging that he's not a general authority, okay, he's probably speaking from his own opinion. I don't know. people at BYU. I think that they sometimes rub shoulders with general authorities. I can't say that for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he's had conversations with general authorities. But whatever the case, whether he has or he hasn't, this got published, and it says, so he goes through like these different prophecies that have to do with the Middle East, with Israel. And at the end of the article, it says, when will two prophets come to the Holy Land? It's already happening. It's a common reality to people in the Middle East, Ludlow said. Ludlow tells students at BYU Jerusalem they are in the right place if they want to meet a general authority. The top place to meet one of the brethren is church headquarters. The second is Provo, specifically the Missionary Training Center. The third is the Holy Land. Quote, there is something to be felt there. They see them all the time. End quote. Before the Battle of Armageddon can take place, Ludlow said, a change in the social and economic environment needs to take place. And, well, it has taken place. Things have taken place since 2010. We talked about the fact that Jerusalem was literally under siege by these protesters. They were blocking roads. There were strikes going on, which cut off services across the country, including in Jerusalem. And they literally camped outside the Knesset building, which is their Congress or their legislative building for the country. I've done videos talking about color revolutions and asymmetric warfare, and how it seems that the nature of warfare has changed since the days of World War II, or even, maybe even since the Afghanistan and Iraq war. I think a lot of people picture that it has to be a conventional war with tanks and airplanes and artillery and mortars and stuff like that. That may still be the case, but we've seen that the powers in the world seem to have wielded this new type of tactic where you get people within a country to destroy the country themselves or change the country to their liking. And I think that's exactly what's going on in Israel. Israel is under attack, both from within and then being supported by people outside the country that want to see Israel become more secular and in line with the globalist agenda. They want to keep Israel a globalist country. And there's a big problem because Israel is getting more and more religious and sticking to the ideals of sovereignty and stuff like that. So the way that I see it, if I were to guess, and I'm not going to be so bold as to say that this is what's happening, but the way that I feel is that Israel is essentially under attack, and it has been this entire year. There's at least been one assassination attempt on Benjamin Netanyahu, and possibly others, including these stories about him going to the hospital. And at the same time, you have President Nelson, Elder Holland, and many others that have gone to Jerusalem. I decided that I wanted to try and track all the different visits that I could of apostles and prophets going to Jerusalem or to Israel. And this is what I came up with. I have this timeline. I did a video about this, and they do go pretty frequently. And I know that I don't have every visit recorded. Yeah, that's kind of a tricky thing to find. There's probably not references for every single time one of them goes to Israel. I'm doing my best, but let's just look at some of the names here. Okay, so for example, Spencer W. Kimball, Howard W. Hunter, President Gordon B. Hinckley, Neil L. Anderson, Jeffrey R. Holland, Quentin L. Cook, Dale G. Renlund, President Nelson and Jeffrey R. Holland, Elder Bednar, Elder Cook, Elder Gong, Elder Razban, Uchtdorf. Oh, oops, I'm reading ones that weren't Israel. Sorry. The most recent one was Elder Uchtdorf, April of this year. And like I said, I'm confident that I haven't captured every single time that they've gone. We've discussed the symbolism of 3.5. A lot of people will look at numbers in the scriptures and be like, it's literally 1,260 days or whatever. But we've studied quite a bit how Jews use numbers and how these books would have been written. And numbers in Judaism convey different concepts. 7 is probably the most famous. You see 7 all the time. It's perfection and completion. So is the number 10 in the mathematical sense. That's how they view that. I just talked about this actually with Rabbi Gerfein about 10 and 7 and 70. Likewise, so is 3.5. We've read it on the church website where it talked about, it was in the Institute manuals for the book of Revelation, how 3.5 to a Jew represents imperfection for one, because it's half of completion. So it's almost like an abominable number. It suggests arrested development, essentially. But the manual specifically said that it's viewed as a time when Satan has power. And so when we think about that, I'm not so sure that I ever look at any of those time frames as literal days or years or what have you, especially based on what we've read from Joseph Smith, how he talked about people that put together these timelines, like Father Miller of the Millerites, who put together this complicated timeline, like what you see today. People putting together these timelines, 7-year tribulation timeline, which is not our doctrine. I have a whole playlist about that, but people in our church keep adopting these evangelical interpretations of scripture. You get all these different timelines, and Joseph Smith spoke out against this and against using numbers to try and calculate certain events that have to do with the second coming. And they try and they try and they try. And I understand they don't have modern day scripture, prophets, apostles. They're just doing the best that they can. They're like, well, these numbers are in here for a reason. Not realizing that numbers they can be symbolic in nature. But anyway, so when we're talking about 3.5, and I'm not so sure it means that 2 prophets are going to literally every single day for 3.5 years be preaching in the streets of Jerusalem. For one thing, I feel like that would be very obvious because it would stir up a lot of anger. I don't know if you've ever seen videos like on Twitter of like Christian missionaries in Jerusalem. There's people that, knowing that they shouldn't, they go to different places where, well, I can't explain it very well, but I can't even remember the law, actually. When it comes to proselyting, our church does not do that. We have an agreement with the government not to do that because we really, really wanted the BYU Jerusalem Center. But there's other Christian churches that like to go there, do street preaching and stuff like that. And it causes a lot of contention. I saw a video recently where there were these Jewish youth, like little boys, that they were attacking these 2 female missionaries. They were throwing rocks at them and pulling at their backpacks, and there were adults with them that were not stopping them, because in Israel they're really against proselyting and the sharing of the gospel, because they're now back in the land. They're trying to help Judaism survive and thrive. And they're looking forward to the coming of Messiah in the Messianic era. And so that kind of thing just is not tolerated in Israel. Now, I've been told by Rabbi Gerfein that you can proselyte, but you can't. There's like certain like restrictions, and even though you can, it's very frowned upon. And I think it has to be done like in a certain way. But whatever the case, our church doesn't do it. But they do meet with leaders in Israel. In fact, look at this. Elder Holland, Cook, Benjamin Netanyahu. In 2016, there was a pretty important visit by Elder Holland and Elder Cook, where they were commemorating Orson Hyde's dedicatory prayer, the dedication of the land for the gathering of the Jews. That was one of the first things that happened after the church was organized in 1830. And when I say one of the first things, I mean relatively speaking. I think it was 1841, so it was 11 years later, but still. For the church being so brand new, to do something like that shows you how important it was for the land to be dedicated. So anyway, in 2016, while they were there to rededicate the Orson Hyde Memorial Park, they met with leaders in Israel. There's been a couple times that they've met with the mayor of Jerusalem. In this case, they met with Benjamin Netanyahu. And so people over there are aware of the church. Okay, so there's just some people I'm never going to convince, and it's not my intention to. You believe what you want. But I think that we have to be open to how prophecy is going to actually play out, and that we may not be able to predict everything with certainty. That's, again, I say again, that's something that the Jews did, predicting exactly what the Messiah was going to look like, what he was going to do based on their own interpretation of the scriptures, leaning to their own understanding. And there's people in the church today that still do that same thing, especially when it comes to the second coming. I prefer to take the approach of, having my own opinions and, reading things, but I place much, 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 much more emphasis on what prophets and apostles have said about prophecies. And there just hasn't been much about this one. And we do know that prophecy comes about by natural means and in natural ways. And if you're not watching, you may not even realize that prophecy has happened. And I think that this is one of those examples. So I think we should just take note that they're not going to be at General Conference. That's very odd. It's out of the ordinary. Out of all the 15, these are the two that are not going to be there. That is very, very, very interesting to me. So I think I'm going to end it there. I'm looking forward to General Conference. I hope that you'll join me when I do the live streams after each session. I have some things going on Friday and Saturday, which may prevent me from doing a live stream after the first session of General Conference, but I'm gonna try and do it. So just don't be surprised if I don't do it. I'm gonna try. But after each session, I'm gonna do a live stream. We can compare notes and talk about what we heard. It's always fun to do. I always find it a very uplifting experience, and I think everybody else does too that participates. It's a great way to spend a General Conference weekend, and so we have that to look forward to. All right, but for now, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.